Hello friends, today we will discuss the basal ganglia. So the basal ganglia has got an input which is from the putamen, predominantly from the putamen, and the output in the form of globus pallidus internus and the substantia nigra pars reticularis, that is SNR is substantia nigra pars reticularis. This output of the basal ganglia inhibits the thalamus. The excites the cortex. This is the basic connection you need to remember always. This is constant, that thalamus always stimulates the cortex. But if you look at there are two pathways. One is the direct pathway and the indirect pathway. The indirect pathway inhibits eye for eye and the direct pathway excites, right? So basically, since the globus pallidus internus and the substantia nigra pars reticularis in output is inhibitory, we need to inhibit the output of the globus pallidus internus to stimulate this pathway. Okay, so basically the direct pathway, what it does, the putaminergic fibers from the putamen, they inhibit the globus pallidus internus, leading to net stimulation of the thalamus, because the globus pallidus internus was inhibiting the thalamus. So we released this inhibition. So if we release the inhibition of the thalamus by inhibiting the globus pallidus internus, the net result is stimulation of the cortical movement. Now let us look at the another part. Suppose what happens, the putamen always remember the output of the putamen will be inhibitory. So putamen will inhibit this globus pallidus externus, which was inhibiting the subthalamic nucleus. So what will happen, the net result of the putamen will be stimulation of the subthalamic nucleus, because the globus pallidus externus was inhibiting the subthalamic nucleus. You inhibited the globus pallidus externus. So the subthalamic nucleus will stimulate the globus pallidus internus, leading to inhibition of the thalamus. So basically, if you look at the thalamus gets inhibited by this subthalamic nucleus. So the indirect pathway is inhibitory. Thus indirect pathway also sends, the subthalamic nucleus also sends stimulatory fibers to the substantia nigra pars reticularis, and which in turn inhibits the thalamus, and also it sends stimulatory fibers to the pediculopontine nucleus. An important thing is regarding the Parkinson's disease. In Parkinson's disease, there is decreased amount of dopamine in the substantia nigra pars compacta, which was getting stimulated by the subthalamic nucleus. So the substantia nigra pars compacta, it facilitates the direct pathway, it stimulates the direct pathway and inhibits the indirect pathway. So if there is a decrease in the dopamine, the direct pathway will not be stimulated and the indirect pathway will also not be inhibited. So what will happen, the net result is a paucity of the movement or decreased amount of movement, which will cause the bradykinesia. So this is how basically the basal ganglia functions, and you just need to remember these two things. The input is always from the putamen, the output is from the GPI and substantia nigra pars reticularis. This pars reticularis is important for the indirect pathway because both of them inhibit the thalamus, but the direct pathway, it basically inhibits this globus pallidus internus. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.